Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Friday. I hope all of you guys are doing good. I've had a pretty good week in certain ways, and I've actually had a terrible week. I gotta tell you guys the terrible part first, and then we'll go on and talk about fun things tonight. Like the fact that 40 million people, including probably, hopefully not, a lot of you will be future phones of America for owning a piece of plastic, owning a piece of rubber that was deemed to be completely lawful when you bought it. And by the way, shall not be infringed means what it says what it means, and your rights are endowed by your creator. So any and all of the over 20,000 federal gun control codes, laws, and rules are all unconstitutional, every single last one. But I was out yesterday. I went to Top Gun, by the way. It was awesome to see you guys that were there in Taylor. I see some of you in the chat. A Vaster Bone, I just saw popped in here. I think I saw Fun to Learn a minute ago. Nice to see you guys. It was awesome to meet some of you in person and see a couple of you guys again. It was an awesome time. Now, until today, it hasn't been springtime in Michigan yet. Wait, it was, but it wasn't. And I guess if you don't like the weather in Michigan, wait a day. But it was 80 degrees at the beginning of April. Then it got down to where just the night before last, there were freeze warnings. And it's been raining every day, so I was behind on my lawns. Went to cut 2 lawns that were supposed to be done 3 or 4 days earlier. Lawnmower wouldn't start. Just completely and utterly dead. Tried to troubleshoot it for hours. I made it to the event 3 minutes before it started. So I made it. And then went afterwards and tried to troubleshoot it last night to no avail. But I woke up with a clear head and figured out how to bypass the starter relay. And I think that's my problem. It's a special one with a diode. But I don't want to bore you guys. So I've had an awesome week and a very frustrating week all at the same time. But I appreciate all of you being here. I'm glad you're here. And I'd like to thank all of you for the many ways you help support this channel. I try to do as much as I can. And sometimes I probably spread myself too thin and should be doing a little bit more cutting grass, landscaping, staining decks than doing this channel, because there's really not any money in being a YouTuber with the demonetizations, the lower ad rates, and all of that. But thanks to all of you guys who do things like leave me generous super chats, Patreon supporters, channel members, and all of you who support over on Locals, which is a censorship-free site. And you can support there monthly for extra content and just to help keep this channel going, because it is getting tougher and tougher with the way things are. And you can also support totally free. And by the way, I can't talk about it on here because we're on YouTube too much, but some awesome ammo deals over there, like that I dropped today, by the way. So you might want to check it out if you're not a member yet, or if you just haven't been there lately. Some really good ones, but I can't say too much more than that because Susan Wiki, she may not be the head of YouTube anymore, but she still hangs out and is still a big fan of the channel. So let's see here. I'm going to start off with a quick question for you guys, actually, because so many people do watch this on replay, and I'm going to want to do this video this weekend. Now, you won't see it this weekend because I have some awesome videos from Lansing and other places that I'm going to get published first, but I want to record this video this weekend. So if you're in the live chat, chime in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, then leave a comment, because I'm thinking probably Sunday I'm going to make it to the range. Right, QD? So this was a gift to the channel and for all of us. I hope it's going to be a good video from my friend Ron. So if you're watching, Ron, this is really cool. So Ron had this years and years ago. It's been in his garage forever. And this is, good thing I'm so strong, guys, a big piece of bulletproof glass. Check this thing out. All right. You guys know I'm strong. I could curl this, but don't want to impress the viewers too much. This thing is like over an inch thick, and it's not actual glass. It's like a Lexan type material, but this thing's heavy. We're probably talking at least, I don't know, 60 pounds-ish, maybe more. Here's what I think I'm going to do. I think I'm going to cut it in half this way from top to bottom, so I have 2 decent size squares. You guys follow me so far? And I want to do 2 videos with it. And I'm going to let you guys choose the first one. And then depending what you guys choose for the first video, I'm going to do something different for the second one. So I want to shoot it. See what it takes to overcome it, right? Now I have two general options. So you guys, I want you guys to chime in. This is a chance for everybody. If you're watching on replay, get down there in the comments. You're going to have till Sunday afternoon. There's two general philosophies here. The first one is, do I do like the ladder test where I start off with 22 LR, then go up to, I don't know, 32, 389, 223556, 762 by 39. I think you guys get the point. Do you start small and keep going up till something defeats it? Or the other way to do it, which almost sounds just as fun to me, but I do this channel for all of us to have fun, so I want your input. Do I just pick a common caliber like 9mm? And then just say, how much 9mm? Do say a pistol. How much 9mm does it take just to keep shooting it till it goes through? Let me know. Ladder test, meaning from weaker round and just keep going till one goes through it. Sounds fun. Or just pick a common caliber. Now, we're not going to pick like 30-6 AP and see how many rounds of that goes through it, because it'll probably just go through it. Start with a 50 BMG. Hey, my buddy Ron donated the bulletproof glass. If somebody else wants to pipe in and donate the 50 BMG rifle, and then a few more of you want to send me some ammo, I promise you I'll do it. But unless that happens, which it probably won't, no 50 BMG. So you can just say ladder test, and I think we all know what that means. It might not be the right wording. I know you reloaders define ladder, load, ladder test, starting at the bottom and keep going up until something defeats it, or just blast the heck out of it with, I don't know, like 9mm or 22 LR. I mean, I do have a TX22 compact that I still need to put a bunch of rounds through. I actually have the ammo budgeted for it that I bought for a video I haven't had time to record yet. I could sit there and shoot like 1,000 rounds of 22 or 2,000 rounds. I think I have almost back there. I don't know. Let me know, guys. And let me know if the whole thing sounds fun. Mo's in the gun action, 54R. See, I could bring that into it if I was starting at 22 and working my way up. If this would stop, and I don't know if it will or not. I don't know. I'll show you guys one more time for those of you looking at it. This is thick stuff. I don't know. It's heavy. 154R might just blast right through it. I don't know. I think this came from maybe an old bank, something like that. From what I recall, I might be off on the details, but they were doing a tear out a long time ago. I think like a decade ago, and he had this piece just bumming around in his garage for quite a while. Okay, Mike McClune's chiming in saying Lexan, half-inch thick. FMJ and JHP went through it. Okay, this is a lot thicker than half. So I see a couple people blast the heck out of it. A couple people say on the ladder test, and I'll cut it in half. So we will see, and then I'll have the other half for, maybe I'll do the opposite, maybe something else. I think I'm going to cut it with, I have a Makita diamond saw, a chop saw. It's gasoline powered, like 79 cc's, I believe it is. And I have a diamond blade. I think if I set it down on the ground, I'll be able to cut it with that gas powered diamond blade, because I was also warned that trying to cut it with just a circular saw is kind of insane. So I want to do something like that for fun. I also had some fun this week. I went to Lansing. Look, it's not really the funnest thing to do. However, I try to make the best of it and try to have a good time. And I made a few community posts, and I've also already done a couple videos, and there's more in the queue from that. What did you guys think of that video I did the other day? I think a lot of you know where I stand, but I was just kind of throwing it out there and saying, what do you guys think? And that was a letter from Michigan Representative DeSanta and 4 of his colleagues that called out their own party, the minority leader. I think a lot of you guys were very refreshed of that. I actually thought, and I wasn't sure because I never know. Sometimes it's fun to do a video where I'm just asking you all to chime in the comments, and almost all of you did. And I read every last comment. I might not have replied to all of them because I've been really, really trying to behind on work because I haven't been able to get any done all week. But I read every last one of them, and I thought there was going to be more of a debate in there. Some people being like, no, you can't do that. But pretty much everybody, but like 1 or 2 people said, yeah, Yeah, it's good for people to call out their own party if they need to. So I got that information when I was in Lansing and reported it to you guys. I also spent some time with Michigan State Representative Angela Regas. You know, she's a nice lady. The main reason why I like her, though, is not only is she friendly and she's cool as heck, by the way, but she's a staunch 2A advocate, 2A defender. And although it's going to be tough and it's an uphill battle, she actually has a pro-gun bill that is on the docket. It's been filed with the clerk, so I'm going to be doing a video about that in the next couple days, which is pretty cool. Pardon me, guys. One little thing, though, that I think is kind of funny, and I'm just going to throw it out there, okay? Because, look, I know why everybody's complaining because everything sucks right now. I totally get it. But it is kind of, I don't know if it's funny. It's not really funny. It's just kind of like, ugh. People will come in and say, why is she putting a pro-gun bill in now? Where was she years ago when the Republicans had the majority? Why didn't she file it then? She's only filing it now because she knows it can't pass, or else she would have filed it last time. Well, that may be the case with some people. I get it. And a lot of people do conflate Washington, D.C. and Michigan's legislators. And I'll give you the perfect example. Often people, I'll do a Michigan video. And this applies to all 50 states, by the way, guys. I'm just talking about Michigan here, but you guys have different rules in these different states, and they may vary drastically. Anyhow, I'll say get a hold of your state rep. Write your state rep. Write your state senator. We need to let them know where we're at with this. And they'll come back and say, I wrote my Michigan state rep, Debbie Dingle. Well, Debbie Dingle is a United States congressman. She's not a state rep. Or they'll say, I wrote my state rep, which is Representative Wahlberg, who's also a United States congressman. So I think a lot of people just don't know the difference between a state rep and a congressman, which is fine. I'm not judging you. That's why I have this channel called 2A EDU. I'm trying to teach people. What's happening, Amanda Wilson? Nice to see you. I'm trying to teach people and get people more active. And we're going to talk about that throughout tonight. So anyways, with that said, people will say, where was Representative Angela Regas 20 years ago? Why didn't she put forth pro-gun bills then? Well, I happen to know her in particular. And if you go back just a couple years ago, she was actually on the front steps of the Capitol cutting hair when Governor Gretchen Whitmer made it illegal to cut hair, made it illegal to mow grass. And a lot of you guys, I'm fortunate to still have you here. We're watching these live streams when I come on and say, guys, I need to feed my family, but I can't because it's illegal to cut grass. Well, her being a cosmetologist, what she did is cut hair. It was illegal for her to cut hair. So what did she do? She stood up there with quite a few ladies, actually. And I don't know if they got arrested is the right word or detained, but yeah, they were stopped. I know she had her license suspended. They made a really big deal out of that. The Attorney General, Nezel, the Governor, Whitmer. So just a couple of years ago, she was at these same exact rallies that I was at. And I've shown footage of these rallies on this channel. She was out there in the crowd at the rallies, cutting hair, protesting on the steps just like us. Now, also, Michigan House of Representatives, they serve 2-year terms, and they can only serve 3 terms in the House. Now it's changed a little bit where they technically could do more than that, but overall total, they're only allowed a dozen years between the House and Senate. They did just recently change that with a ballot initiative. But up until the ballot initiative that they said was to put more strict term limits on them, not necessarily. But all of them that are serving now are serving under the old rules before it just changed where you could only serve 3 2-year terms in the House. And I'm just trying to set the record straight just so people understand, because it is good to be negative about a lot of this. And we should be negative about a lot of this. But let's bark up the right tree sometime instead of the wrong tree, because there's certain people there. Look, they've got it tough right now. You're talking 2A defenders like Representative Angela Regas, Representative Phil Green, who I did a community post of. He's a really good dude. People like Representative DeSanta, very pro 2A. People like my state representative, who's an awesome representative. Some of you got to hang out with her last night, Jamie Thompson. These are people that are not going to buckle. They're not going to bend on the 2A. And there's people coming, guys. I'm telling you. They'll come by the hundreds. They'll come by the thousands. Moms Demand Action, David Hogg, college students just bombarding these people. Not to mention the way the Democrats, the very slim majority, are acting like they have a super majority. There's no decorum in the House. They're not actually allowing them to vote on any amendments. Immediate effect. You guys have seen the way they vote on that, and probably have to show you guys that again too, just so everyone can see how insane it is. Whether you're in Michigan or anywhere in the United States, to think there's a state that's just running this roughshod over everything. So there's people out there trying to flog some of these pro 2A and patriotic representatives. So just keep in mind, maybe the reason somebody like Representative Regas didn't introduce anything before is because it's her first term. She's only been in for about 3.5 months. Now, there's people in Washington, D.C. that have been there forever. They've been there their whole life. And that's a totally different story. I just wanted to let you know that. I'm not correcting anybody. I doubt the people that left those comments are even in the chat right now. It's just something good to know. Before you just go like throwing stones at somebody, just do a little bit of research, right? And I know all of you guys do. So I also did a video talking about, it's going to be a follow-up. So I did a video talking about the complete gun ban at the Michigan Capitol. Completely 100%. Advanced weapons detector scanner systems. New enhanced software that's no doubt going to include artificial intelligence, algorithms, crazy stuff to try to sense people coming with weapons far in advance, even before they will walk up to the Capitol building. Well, I wasn't happy about that. And as far as I know, I was the first person to report that news. So I went back to Lansing for a follow-up. And there are more than one or two representatives, but I was lucky enough to get 2 Michigan State representatives that are really good ones. They're both really smart, very pro 2A. And we did a little follow-up video. And I think a lot of you guys are going to like that. So stay tuned on this channel this weekend, because one of the number one things you guys were saying is, okay, so we're going to sit there and put more cops and more security to guard politicians. But what about our schools? What about our schools? Like Dr. John Lott said, he's the master statistician on anything to do with firearms. Firearm crime. Gun crime, as the other side likes to say it, even though we know it's just a battle of good versus evil. And a gun is neither good nor evil. It's an inanimate object, but bad people commit crimes. And these laws only affect the law-abiding, and pretty soon, every single person is going to be a criminal. But bad people commit heinous crimes like murder. It's one of the oldest crimes in the world. Murder's always been against the law. I guess the first murder, at least if you believe what I do, was Cain killing Abel with a rock, with a stone. And in my opinion, that was the first murder in this world, and it's been going on ever since. But murderers don't care about a gun-free zone, do they? They don't care about a sign on the door, and a lot of you brought that up. They said, so they're going to bolster the security at the Capitol for all the politicians, but then they're going to put a sign on the door for our children? Well, you might be shocked. You might be shocked. And this is why I go to Lansing, okay? I just want to let you guys know this. You need to know the doom and gloom, because evil is always going to prevail. And it is prevailing right now when good men do nothing. So you have to know the truth, no matter how much it sucks. Because if you don't know, I guess you don't know what you don't know. You have to know before you can fight it. And I also try to go there for encouragement. And you might be surprised to hear, I'm just going to give you a little teaser, a state representative right on camera with me, and was not scripted at all. None of this stuff is ever scripted. Said, I don't want that kind of security. I want to protect our schools instead. That was refreshing. So hopefully you guys look forward to that video when I put it out here. Hopefully tomorrow, if not Sunday. An actual politician that said, nope, don't want that here. I want it in the schools instead. I didn't know they were going to say that, but I was glad. All right. For the main attraction. A piece of plastic in this case. Sometimes maybe it's rubber. Something that was originally designed for a handicapped veteran. That's actually a true story, just so you know. A lot of people say, oh, that's just a loophole. No, that was literally the reason why. The arm brace, the pistol stabilizing brace, was invented by Mr. Bosco. Invented it for disabled veterans and allowed them to hold an unwieldy firearm with one hand because they didn't have proper use of the other. And in many cases, don't have the other extremity whatsoever, right? Well, like all things, you can't stop innovation. You can't stop technology. And they started making multiple versions. Where I get it. This one is definitely different than the very first pistol brace when I bought one. In fact, the very first one I bought is so long ago. It was before it was SB Tactical. They just used to call it the SIG brace. Did anyone buy one back in those days? They had two models. They had one for the AR. And then shortly thereafter, or right around the same time, they came out with one with the AK. It was big. It had this big piece of rubber, a flap. I meant to have that here for the stream tonight, but I lost track of it somewhere because I've swapped things around on that pistol over the last, let's see here, dozen or more years. Literally dozen or more years. That's how long people have been buying these. When I bought my first pistol brace, and it was a SIG brace, it literally said SIG brace on it. They gave you this little letter, and it was like on cardstock. It was shrunk down instead of, boy, this is the only letter we need, by the way. What do you guys think? This is the only letter we need. Right here. The letter that Thomas Jefferson and these brave souls wrote to the King of England. This is the only letter that I acknowledge that's been written anytime soon, but soon or for the last 250 years. But the ATF would write a letter at that time. They had written a letter back saying, after reviewing it, and we've determined that it does not make it a rifle, and it is not subject to the National Firearms Act. And I'll have to find the box, but I'm pretty sure I still have that, actually. So hold on a minute. People bought something, and the ATF themselves, not that we need their permission, I'm just calling out the irony. They themselves said, perfectly legal, not a problem. We have no purview over a brace because, first of all, we only have the authority under Congress, which is a bunch of BS, to regulate firearms. And if it's not attached to anything, it doesn't matter. We can't even look at it. But, by the way, even if it is attached to a firearm, it does not make it subject to the National Firearms Act and all of its restrictions. In other words, SBR, right? So now they're telling you, and they've gone back and forth with this a few different times. They said, well, if you shoulder it, it could be constructive intent. But if you don't shoulder it, it's not. And then they said, no, you can shoulder it. As long as you didn't intend, as long as you had no intent, criminal intent, to circumvent the National Firearms Act, it didn't matter what the heck you did with it. And that was the stance on it for most of the dozen years that these have been out. Now, these have been popular. So popular, in fact, that I think it is up there near the 40 million mark because there's certain brands that never even got direct letters. It's impossible for them to know. I mean, this is polymer. How many of these have been printed? Okay. Nobody knows how many there are. But I think at this point, we have probably about 40 million. Now, it might not be 40 million different people, but 40 million of these braces, making many of you and many unknowing people that don't keep track of watching YouTube videos and congressional hearings, future felons of America. And that future is coming very soon. Actually, it's coming here in about 3.5 weeks. No, they're going to cite the Chevron deference and say, well, hold on a minute. If a law is ambiguous and it needs some explaining to do, the deference goes to the agency, to the deep state, to the bureaucracy, and not the actual law that was enacted by Congress. Well, all of this is a huge problem from the beginning. It just keeps compounding and compounding and compounding because the National Firearms Act, literally one of the most illegal things that was ever written. No, literally, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And with that being in the Second Amendment, not granting you the right to keep and bear arms, but saying, don't tread on me. Congress shall not infringe. You know, the fact that somebody would even have the notion in 1934 to sign their name to a law like that means one of two things. Either the train had already rolled far enough down the tracks and they knew that they already had Marxism and despotism completely and utterly ingrained in America. It would just take a while for people to figure it out. Or they had no fear of the people then. Because it's literally one of the most tyrannical laws ever. Literally smacking the Second Amendment right in the face, cold cocking it to the ground, and then defecating on it. Because the National Firearms Act established a tax and other very strict regulations on a natural God-given right that Thomas Jefferson knew when he wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776. All men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. These are the laws of nature of nature's God, and that's what the Founding Fathers realized. And then when you go back to about 13 years later, 1789, they had the first draft of the Bill of Rights. And originally it had a couple more amendments, actually. But by the time it was signed and ratified in 1791, it contained the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. And some of them were changed, some were eliminated, but the Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, that actually didn't change from the draft all the way until it was ratified in 1791. So 15 years later, the Founding Fathers said, yeah, we better write this down, actually, because we might be noticing a little bit of tyranny already. And they knew, like all people, we all know this, everybody gets old and eventually everybody dies, and they didn't want this country to die when the Founding Fathers died, so they wrote, shall not be infringed. And they even said why. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Now, who is the militia? Is it the United States Armed Services? No, absolutely not. And if you read the history of the United States at its founding, one of their worst fears they had, it was actually right up at the top, was that we would ever even have a standing army in times of peace. See, the United States did not want an all-encompassing military that was more powerful than civilians. They actually wanted the militia, which is every single person back then, and they wanted it to be every person now, to keep and bear arms. The militia, the people, were supposed to be the most powerful, because when the government fears the people, there is liberty. But when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. And I guess things had clearly flip-flopped by 1934, because the National Firearms Act was put in, putting a $200 tax in most cases, with the exception of the AOW being a $5 tax. $200 was thousands and thousands of dollars back then. Not that it matters, because if they were to even tax you 1 penny on a God-given right, that would be completely unconstitutional. If they were to have one gun control bill that had one word in it, that would be completely and utterly unconstitutional. Shall not be infringed was very clearly spoken back then. And it's just as clear now as it was back then, and it always will be. Except here's the problem. By the time 1934 rolled around, the American people had grown soft enough, complacent enough. There was enough electricity in most homes by then. A lot of people were starting to get a Frigidaire, an ice box. That's what some of my old relatives that I miss, like my grandmother. My grandma used to call it the ice box. She'd say, go in the ice box. I got some ice cream. No, it was a plug-in refrigerator that used some sort of refrigerant with electricity. But when she grew up, it was still actually an ice box where they'd cut it out of the lake when it was frozen in wintertime, and they would usually pack it in ice sheds, ice shacks, in sawdust or similar to keep it from melting, and they'd pull it out with big tongs, and you could buy a block of ice to put it in your ice box, and that was to try to keep some of your perishable food sanitary a little bit longer. Well, by 1934, the people were complacent enough. They had what they needed, and they weren't worried about what was necessary for the security of a free state, and they rolled over and took it, establishing certain types of firearms that the military, the standing army that the founding fathers were dreadfully worried about. I don't want to say that enough. And I'm not anti-troop. I'm not anti-veteran. I hope everyone's mature enough to know what I'm saying here. And if you're mad at somebody, be mad at the founding fathers, not me. I didn't say this. The founding fathers' biggest fear was that we would raise an army and keep it standing during times of peace. So not only was it that some people say this, and look, I agree, I'd love to have this. This would be the best thing ever. When people say the founding fathers wanted us to have all of the same arms as the military, which the military has short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, machine guns, destructive devices. That's just the start of it. Many other things that we know about, probably things we don't know about. And where we're at right now, that would be awesome. But would you believe me? And if you don't, I challenge you to do the research. That would actually be despicable to the founding fathers. No, the founding fathers did not want the civilians to be equally armed to the military. They wanted us to be more armed than the military. See, well-regulated militia, it doesn't mean that we would be regulated like gun control and regulations. No, that's not the regulations they had in mind at all. Well-regulated means you would be well-trained. Things that could include that was you would have the proper armament. You would have the proper physical and mental mindset, which usually generally comes with things like training and drilling. And that's what the early militias did, and some militias still do that. I'm not saying there's no militias at all in this country. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying there's clearly a drop in the bucket compared to what there was at the founding of this country and what the founding fathers said was necessary to the security of a free state. They always wanted us to have a standing Navy, okay? The Marines, the leathernecks, would be a fast deployable troops that could go out and help fight off pirates and things like that. That was one of the first things they did when you had pirates coming and taking over and robbing merchant ships. And the Marine Corps has been disbanded before and brought back. Now, the founding fathers obviously knew what an army was. They knew what a navy was. They knew what all of these things were because, look, this country was founded out of war. This country was broken in half out of war again. Oh, I guess it was a little less than 100 years later. They knew all about war. They knew all about the Army. They knew all about the Navy. If they wanted the Second Amendment to say, a well-armed Navy being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the military to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If they thought that that was the number one way for us to be free, they would have said that. They could have said that if they wanted to say it. Of course they would have said it. These were the leaders of the free world at that time. It didn't matter what anybody else wanted to say. If they truly thought that, they would have written that down. So when we say we should be able to have any firearm, including a short-barreled rifle, look, the pistol brace is awesome for people on their pistols, but this should all be a moot point. But for anybody to say we should be able to have this because we should be equally armed as our military, yes, great, but way better than now, but you're still wrong because they wanted the military to be less armed than we the people, actually. People say, but hold on a minute, hold on a minute. That couldn't be the case. Things have advanced. We need to have warships. Oh, really? Because civilians actually did have warships, actually, that fought in the Revolutionary War. But we need heavy artillery. Yeah, and that's why most of the cannons that were used were actually owned by private individuals. But we need to have batteries and we need to have arsenals. Yeah, actually, most of the ammunition magazines, as they were called. No, I don't mean the thing that people often mistakenly call a clip-on line that inserts into your gun. I mean a magazine, like a safe place to keep your munitions, your powder, your musket balls. A good majority of that was privately owned too, actually. But somewhere along the line, from the 1770s, things kicked off like crazy in the mid 1800s, didn't they? 1860s. Well, there was tumult in the 1850s, 60s. In many ways, stuff still never calmed down from the United States so-called a civil war. You could look at it as a revolutionary war too, in many cases, actually. I have a hard time actually calling it one thing because, look, it depends where you live, what they call it. But I often like to call that actually almost the second Revolutionary War, if you really think about it. The so-called United States Civil War. There were lots of militias that were called up for that. Lots of them. Now, I suppose we shouldn't be surprised when we had a president, Abraham Lincoln, who suspended habeas corpus, would take judges that ruled against him and just throw them in prison and lock them in there without any charges till the war was over. You know, the United States Constitution was torn down a lot. The country fundamentally changed during the United States Civil War. I don't know if it was at that moment, but from sometime from then until 1934, the government had become so powerful and the people had become so weak that there was no second Civil War or third Revolutionary War, however you want to word it. Because I know what the history books say. I get it. The history books are written by the victors. And the Union, quote, won, and Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, but he actually didn't free the slaves. He made it where everybody can become a slave. Now, the history books don't say that. But if you actually read the constitutional amendment, unless you're incarcerated, unless you're in prison, then every last darn person can be a slave. You know, 40 million people have these braces, which I suspect they do. And they don't do anything about it, which they probably won't, because in 1934, there was millions and millions of people that owned, quote, NFA items, and they rolled over and they laid down, and life was good. They had a Frigidaire and something to wipe their butt with, and I guess that's all people need. I don't know how they survived back in 1934 without TikTok, because it appears to be about the only thing allowing people to survive today. I hate it. Don't have it installed on my phone, but I'm just saying. So we fought the Revolutionary War for many reasons. And they actually wrote down a lot of the reasons. And I was going to read this last week, but I'm certainly going to read it tonight. They had reasons for the Revolutionary War, very profound reasons. And one of the big things that kicked it off was them coming for the colonist guns, the Patriots guns. And now we're to the point where they're coming for our guns, which was the reason why the first Revolutionary War started. And then I'm going to call it the second Revolutionary War because, look, you guys don't have to agree with me on this, but I think you all know where I'm coming from. That happened in the mid-1800s. That made it where every last person could become a slave. It's true. Every person can be a slave if you're incarcerated, if you're imprisoned. And they do, and they are. Everybody with one of these could be enslaved. Now, we're all enslaved in so many ways. Tax slave, afraid of your own shadow slave. I mean, everyone's so afraid of the government right now because they're so tyrannical, obviously. No, this makes me think a lot about the founding of this country. It makes me think a lot about the so-called Civil War, Second Revolutionary War in this country. A lot. This is a piece of plastic, but Uncle Sam could use some of your labor. You could do a lot of labor. I don't know, 75 cents a day. Maybe free if you act out. Bread and water if you act out. There's still people that were ushered in by police. They opened the door. There was grandmas in the Capitol on January 6th taking pictures. Oh, geez, the Capitol's open. I mean, I walk in my state's Capitol all the time. I would have thought I was allowed to walk in there too. If I had a police officer open the door, come on in, take a tour of the Capitol. There's still people sitting in a hole on bread and water right now. That reminds me a lot too. Remember I said Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, locked up his opponents, threw away the key, held them with no charge, just said, you're not going to stop me. I'm going to do whatever I want. And the South said, but the Fugitive Slave Act. And he said, I don't care. Because see, a tyrant, the definition of where a tyrant is someone who rules outside the rule of law. The supreme law of the land says shall not be infringed. The people have become so weak by 1934. There was nary a protest. There was nothing. If we would have had the amount of protesters that Moms Demand Action has now back in 1934, probably could have stopped the NFA. If we had the amount of protests that Moms Demand Action has right now in Lansing, Michigan, we probably wouldn't have 40 gun control bills, of which about a third of them have already been signed into law, and that's just the beginning. I promise you that. I promise you. I was just in Lansing the other day. I hear things. I do investigating. I don't call myself an investigative journalist because I'm a landscaper, but when I'm there, I'm investigating, and I know people. It's just the start. I promise you. I used to think America had to have been tough back then. Have you guys ever thought about that for a minute? The greatest generation, they call it, that served World War II. And I knew a lot of great people. They've all passed now. And if there's anyone you know still alive that's a World War II veteran, make sure you give them a hug because they're very old. All the people that were dear to me have now passed, but I knew some awesome dudes that served in World War II. So I'm not saying there weren't awesome people then, but I don't know. My whole life I thought, man, they just don't make them like they used to. Back in the 40s, people were just so tough. Were they really, though? I don't know. I mean, they were. But maybe they weren't. And it's hard to explain. Because 10 years after our government had made, just think about this for a minute. The United States got into World War II near the end of it, when it was over by 1945. So basically 1 decade, almost exactly, pretty much exactly 10 years after our own government put in the National Firearms Act, which was a national registration of these firearms. And registration always has and always will lead to confiscation. We set so many people, and I'm not questioning their bravery, and I think it's awesome for what they did, went over from our country. American GIs went over to fight for a country that had made them register their firearms, set up a confiscation scheme, and put a $200 tax just 10 years earlier. And then we went to fight other countries who had been, oh, imagine that, making people register their firearms, confiscating their firearms. You know, they say with Mussolini, but he made the trains run on time. Yeah, and he confiscated the guns too. It was called fascism. It's called an unholy alliance between large corporations and the government. Oh, imagine that, YouTube. You want to go to other countries? Go to TikTok. Go to the new battery plants for electric vehicles that Gretchen Whitmer and the Democrat-controlled legislature in Michigan are paying billions of dollars to bribe them to come in here and make an unholy alliance between corporations, now even foreign corporations. So how is it? And this is a question, and I hope you guys have some thoughtful just discourse on this. And this is not me ripping on anybody's grandfather, because I wouldn't rip on my own family who served in the war. How is it that 1 decade before the greatest generation went into World War II full bore, I have relatives, they're deceased, that were Marines, that were sailors, Army, Air, what's it called? It wasn't quite Air Force yet, the Army Air, and I just can't think of the name right now. Look, went in there and fought like hell to keep communism and fascism and the Third Reich out of all these other places that were confiscating all the civilians' guns, but didn't even care or notice or have a problem with the National Firearms Act in our own Air Corps. Thank you, guys. Air Corps. Look, does that even make any sense? And this isn't one of those like, gotcha, now I'm going to give you the answer. Can anyone help me make sense of this? In 1934, everyone just laid down and didn't give a crap about the National Firearms Act, which is literally, by definition, taxing a natural God-given right and putting you on a registry. And then all these people went over and fought, all these Americans, and they're great Americans, and they were tough in many ways. I get that, but why were they so tough they could go over there and fight off tyranny in all these other countries and didn't even bother to look or to even like talk about or do anything? Like, dude, when I was a kid, nobody ever even talked about the National Firearms Act. It's actually only now that we have the internet, and there's many curses with the internet, but there's many good things that we can actually get together and talk about these things. You know, I used to talk to people that were veterans and they in my family, and they'd say, yeah, that's why I fought in World War II, so we can have guns, because they took the guns from the people over in Germany and they were helpless. So we had to go help them. But they didn't give a damn about them taking all the guns here just 10 years earlier. This country's always been messed up like that. I don't know. Maybe it always will be. People have fought communism so many times in so many wars, endless wars, conflicts, policing actions, call it whatever you want. And Moms Demand Action is up there fighting like hell constantly in my home state of Michigan. And trust me, they're fighting like crazy in all 50 states. I don't care where you guys live. Moms Demand Action is on the move. Everywhere. And they're prolific and they're powerful. And trust me, I'm not going to sit there and exaggerate a group that I do not like. They're very, very powerful. And they're getting more powerful by the minute. And they're in your hometown. Trust me. And they're in your state, and they're going to your capital, wherever you're at. This is no joke, guys. In my opinion, there's probably at least 40 million of these in the United States. This is where you can literally become a felon, get incarcerated, and become a slave. Slavery is perfectly legal as long as you're locked up. That's what happened when Lincoln freed the slaves. He freed a certain kind of slave, but then said everybody would now, or could potentially, B1. How many people do you think care about this? They didn't care about bump stocks. Chevron deference. All right. Should we even be talking about a deference? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And now it comes down to some United States Department of Natural Resources Supreme Court case where they have deference over civil litigation. First of all, Chevron deference is completely null and void. Marbury v. Madison. All laws repugnant to the Constitution are void. Well, if the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, if that's gotten us to the point where we now have ATF using Chevron deference, Chevron deference was never even supposed to affect any type of thing with a criminal penalty. It wasn't supposed to cover criminal law at all. This is something where they're threatening people with felonies. So Chevron deference shouldn't even apply. We literally live in a country right now that says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And we have to worry about Chevron deference. Just think about that. It's literally crazy. You know, I've been talking to some people in real life, and the number one question I get, and we had a cool event last night in Taylor. It was myself, Brendan from Great Lakes Gun Rights, and Michigan State Representative Jamie Thompson. We had a panel, and there were awesome people there. Like I said when I started this, nice to see a lot of you guys. One of the key questions was, and it branched into several questions, is how do I comply? What do I do to comply? I'm looking for a loophole. I get it. That is the number one thing and people want to know about. And sure, there's practical implications where that may be all a lot of you are worried about. But shouldn't we be worried about how we got to the point where a well-regulated militia that was supposed to be more powerful than the military, obviously, if it was the reason we could be free, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We've de-evolved from that to worrying about loopholes for the Chevron deference. What are you guys doing? What are you going to do? And please don't answer me publicly on YouTube. That was a hypothetical, rhetorical question. But just to spur some thought on what are you going to do? There's a takings where you can't take without just compensation, the takings clause. They said, oh, well, you don't have to take. You can just make the barrel longer in a particular way. You can register it pursuant to the National Firearms Act. But I talked about this months and months ago. And I'm not a lawyer, but I did cite the actual statutes and show them on this stream. The actual code says that they shall collect the tax. The code that the ATF's running under. It doesn't say you can collect the tax when you want to. You shall collect the tax. So technically, in my opinion, the ATFs, well, they're breaking the law, everything they do. But even on this very, very narrow topic, very, very narrow topic, the statute that allows them to collect the tax says they shall collect. So if they're giving away free tax stamps right now, hold on a minute. By the plain reading of the federal statute, they're breaking it. Now, why does this matter? I don't know if it's going to matter or not. This is just stuff I'm throwing out there as a thought exercise, okay? Let me switch it to Michigan real quick, but follow me. We're going to come right back to this, these tax stamps. Some years ago, it was the reason Gretchen Whitmer got elected. Unequivocally, everybody knows it. She promised, if you elect me, I'll make marijuana legal in the state of Michigan. And she did get elected, and they did. I'm not going to get into debate whether you guys like dope or not. I'm just saying, look, It was way more important to people in Michigan than guns. Clearly, obviously, we have a Democrat majority, Democrat governor over the legalization of marijuana. All right. So an interesting thing started happening because federally, it's still considered like a top tier drug. According to the feds, it's as bad as it gets. Not saying that according to the federal government, weed is worse than cocaine. Okay. It's up there with heroin, all of these things. Now, since weed's the worst drug there is, according to the feds, if you don't believe me, please look it up. This is not my opinion. I know people are going to fight me on this. Not in my opinion. The federal government says marijuana is the harshest drug there ever is and ever can be. Now, if you have that, you lose your right to keep and bear arms, actually, according to the federal government. So here's what happened. Michigan was issuing medical marijuana cards because first it was medical, then it was recreational. Well, they started giving weed cards out to the same people they were giving CPLs to, and the feds came in and did a little audit of that. And they said, well, hold on a minute. If this person's got a marijuana card attesting that they're using it for medicinal purposes, they're admitting right there they're a prohibited person, but now they have a CPL. And right on the form 4473, it says, are you an unlawful user or addicted to any drugs? I'm paraphrasing. And then they added it in more recent years, including marijuana, which is federally illegal. I totally butchered the quote, but that is essentially what it says. So you've got all these people that the feds figured out. They're like, hold on. So Michigan's issuing marijuana cards and CPLs to the same people. That means they could be buying guns without getting a NICS check because according to the Brady Act that established all of this crap, Michigan's CPL, concealed pistol license, is supposed to be a NICS check alternative. More rigorous background check than a NICS check, fingerprints, all this stuff to get a concealed pistol license. So since you've done a much higher background check, you don't need to do the lower one into perpetuity. And that's the way it is in a lot of your states, but not all. So Michigan broke federal law. The Michigan government broke federal law and issued CPLs and weed cards to the same people, which is 100% federally illegal. I think you guys know what I'm talking about here. And what did they do? How many people do you think from the state of Michigan went to prison? All right. Oh, geez. Imagine that, 0. Okay. How many of the people from the state of Michigan got a fine? I'm talking the actual people. Let me think here. Oh, no. Still 0. How many lost their job? 0. How many even had anything bad happen to them? 0. Nothing happened to the government because it never, ever does. Instead, they punished every single CPL holder in Michigan and said, since your state's issuing to some people a federally prohibited substance along with a gun, that means nobody with a CPL can bypass their NICS check with it. And I have a CPL and I get delayed every time. And all my gun videos come out weeks after they should, or I want them to. Because of that. Because for some reason, I get a delay every time and I can't use my CPL as a NICS bypass because Michigan broke federal law. It's pretty much the essence of it. So let's go back to these braces again in the tax stamps. The statute that gives them the authority to collect the tax says they shall collect the tax on an NFA item. So, since the last time the government broke its own laws, the people had to pay. Do you think it's possible that if it comes out later, and maybe they already know this, that it's actually against the law for the ATF to give out free tax stamps? Do you think the ATF might go to prison? Do you think they might come after them? If you're lucky, they just won't do anything at all, but they could come after you, like they came after all the CPL holders in Michigan when the state of Michigan was found to have broken federal law. It's not a perfect analogy, but think about it. The statute that says they shall collect. Shall does not mean may. When legislators want to use the word may, they use the word may. But when they use the word shall, that means something very pointed and something very, very specific. Marksman TV, what's happening, man? Shout out to you and I think you guys already know, but if you're not familiar with the Marksman TV channel, great friend of mine. And if we weren't both too busy, you should have seen a collab from us like 3 months ago. So let's try to find time to hang out. Let's try to find time to hang out again before we retire. All right, Marksman. Now I want to go down and hang out with him at his shop in Indiana. He's an awesome friend of mine and really good channel. He brings up something curious here, and then I'm going to read some of these super chats. He says, you posed a great question. You held up the brace. Who cares about this? People may not care about braces now, but they'll care when the next thing is on the block. I think so. I hope so. I don't know, though. Because when nobody cared about bump stocks, I thought, okay, but they'll care about the next thing. And then force reset triggers. I guess when nobody cared about that, well, then they care about the next thing. And the auto key card, nobody cared about that. So maybe the next thing. And look, the auto key card isn't even a firearms thing. It's a drawing. I've talked ad nauseum on that for 2 weeks straight. Just the principle of that. And I'm talking on a First Amendment basis when it comes to that. Now, I don't know how far it goes. Let me know, chat. Will you care the next thing? Is there ever an amount of things they could take where people would care? They didn't care in 1934 enough. They didn't care in 1968 enough. They didn't care in 86 enough. That was a pro-firearms bill, by the way, that was poison pilled to ban machine guns, unless they were registered prior to that May date. Imported machine guns were banned in 1968 from import. Do you know how much cool stuff? Look, the Founding Fathers didn't want us to have equal arms to the military. They wanted us to have more, actually. So every single gun the military has, obviously, or they wouldn't have said a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Is it literally going to have to come down to? I wonder this sometimes. 1994, people didn't really care so much. There were a couple people that cared a little bit, so they put a sunset clause, and that AWB did expire, thankfully, 10 years later. What if they... See, I remember when they came after the 7.6 ammo. Do you remember that? Actually, a lot of the AR guys thought it was awesome because they didn't like AKs and 5.45x39. Although there were a few sparse ARs that were chambered in it, it pretty much was the AK-74 round. Polish Tantal. Look, I saw more AR guys ripping on AK guys when that was banned than I saw people ticked off that they were banning 13 cents a round military surplus ammo. It used to even be cheaper than that, but that's about what it cost when they banned it. It was at about 13 or so cents a round when it was banned. There was a time before that where it was even a little cheaper. Now, the minute it got banned, the prices went up, but more people in the gun community chastised the people that liked that round than anybody got mad at the government over it. But thankfully, when M855, the green tip, when that was up on the chopping block and it came this close to getting banned, people did fight back on that. AK and AR guys, everybody did. That's one thing they fought back on. You never know. That could be back on the table to be banned tomorrow. You just never know. Doesn't matter. These were deemed legal. Well, these were deemed legal back in 1791, obviously. In 1791 is when these and everything like this became legal into perpetuity. But humor me, even within the world we live in, for a dozen years, the ATF said, not a problem. They went back and forth a couple times, but in the end of the day, they would send you letters in a lot of these boxes. I have a couple of them that came with your brace. Are we going to have to get down to where they're coming after the 1911? Is that the gun it's going to take? Or are people still going to say, but hold on, I can still own my Heritage Rough Rider. 6 rounds of 22. Aha, I have a loophole. What's that? You going to dig something up from somewhere? No, no, no. Shh. Loophole. Don't tell them. But the 22, the Heritage Rough Riders, not only chambered in 22 LR, you can get a 22 Magnum cylinder for it. Oh, really? Loophole. All right. Whew. Okay, we're good. I've had more people tell me about these braces, as long as they can find the loophole, they're good, than have been ticked off about it. How come that seems to be the same way every time? Either ha 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 serves all those suckers right that actually like that stupid thing. That's all I got with the bump stock. You have a bump stock? Why would have you had one of those? Back when they were legal, Fed boy that's watching right now. Back when I used to have one, people say, why are you ticked off about that being banned? It wastes ammo. It's stupid. You can't be a serious shooter if you would want to spray ammo like that. This wasn't Mom's Demand Action saying this. This was the gun community on this channel. I used to get berated on a regular basis because, much like I'm ranting about this right now, I was ranting about that. Then I came in here and ranted about 7 and 6 ammo. And look, I love the AR, but I'm more of an AK guy. Okay? The AR guys wanted to bury me. They're like, ha 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 ha. Sucks to be. Look, I've had more people talk about how crafty they are with the loopholes for this than are outraged over the fact that they're literally trying to make up to 40 million people felons overnight. So what is it? A 10-round magazine. Okay. 1911, 2 world wars. It's a man stopper. You shoot someone with a 45. They come off their feet, through the wall, even if it's a brick wall. And then they go through the neighbor's house. I don't mean the round, but the person's body. And yes, I still have people tell me that daily, actually. Why do you need an AR-15 when you can have Colt 45, 2 world wars, and when you shoot someone with it, it doesn't just take them, it takes their soul, and you shoot them in the pinky and their whole body launches off the ground and just leaves. And I wish I was joking. And I wish I was joking. People literally tell me that every day. Every day. So there you go. You're good. I can still have my 1911. That's all you need. And they're great guns. And I love 45 ACP, by the way. I'm not ripping on the gun. I'm not ripping on the caliber. And they'll come for those. Well, why do you need 7 rounds? Like you just said, it picks them up off their feet. Does anyone actually believe it does that? There might be somebody that does. If you do, throw it in the chat and maybe people have the generosity to inform you. But look, what's it going to take? They banned all the guns in Britain. We fought the King of England to be going right down the same path because in the Michigan House of Representatives Judiciary Committee meeting, they were gloating saying, we need to look at what they're doing over in England. We need to adopt all the laws England's done. Hold on a minute. We went from shall not be infringed to the greatest generation not caring about the NFA to people only looking for loopholes about these that don't care about these. We fought the Brits, and now we literally have people with the audacity to stand right out there. Right out there. It's all recorded. You guys can go, if you find it on House Session TV on Michigan's website. It's still on there. I was there to see it in real life. We need to look more into what England's doing with this. A country that fought against the King of England so that your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, your natural God-given right. And now there's legislators that are so emboldened and embrazened. They're saying we need to adopt the English style gun control. Excuse me. Excuse me. Wow. I've talked about these to about, 30 people in the last couple of weeks offline, just face to face. Some of them said, that's stupid. Why would you even have that to begin with? Other people said, why would you need it? And then a couple other people that actually had these, and these are all gun owners, by the way. I want to make this clear. I wasn't talking to Mom's Demand Action. I'd have a lot more friends if I joined that, by the way. YouTubers that are into that are huge and don't have to cut grass for a living, by the way. But anyways, then a couple people said, I do have one, but I'm making out. I'm making out big time. I'm like, why is that? They're like, dude, I'm getting like 20 free tax stamps. I'm like, okay. You're registering 20 of your firearms? No, I'm not. I'm like, well, of course you are. Argue with a few people about that recently. Tried to tell me the National Firearms Act is not a registry. I'd rather be out on the steps of Lansing holding these up, saying, no, we're not in, not, look, I'm on YouTube right now. Not just this, but all of it. Then I'd sit there arguing with people whether the NFA is a registry or not. Why do I need this? Colt 45, Colt 45, Colt 40. Look, I like 45. It's not even called Colt 45. It's called 45 automatic Colt pistol, 45 ACP. And the other one's called 45 Colt. It's not called 45 long Colt because there was never a 45 short Colt. But I digress. Even though half the ammo manufacturers and suppliers will actually list it under that. Look, there's 45 Colt and there's 45 ACP. Colt 45 is a malt liquor. But I have literally people arguing with me saying, just get the brace away. Man up. Colt 45, 7 rounds, 2 world wars. These are my gun friends I'm arguing with. You know what's awesome about Mom's Demand Action? Kind of jealous, actually. When I go to their rallies, look, I don't willingly go to their rallies, but I've been at the Capitol and been there several times. They all unite about one thing. We want the guns. We want all of them as quickly as possible. Gifford's whole crew. Look, Gabby Giffords literally said, we want them all. What do we want? Gun control. When do we want it? No. What do we want? Gun control. When do we want it? No. They chant that over and over and over. We argue about this versus that versus, I don't know. And I'm not saying you guys in the chat tonight. When I say you, I don't mean you. I mean we, like the gun people and the 2A people or something or whatever it is that we are, right? All right, I had some super chats. Let me read those, Linda. If you could help me cue those up real quick. I may have ranted so long, she might be in bed by now. But thank you to ADXR920 for gifting 10 channel memberships. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, dude. And I am going to try to, since my... Yes, that's what I was talking about, Marksman TV. Maybe before you hopped on here, I got on this whole rant. I'm like, what happened when the National Firearms Act went through? Pretty much exactly a decade before the greatest generation went off to serve World War II. Like, we fought communism and all these isms throughout the whole world, but everyone just sat there when the NFA went through and just went, nah, whatever. Apparently now I'm pontificating. I'll give you guys a rest from that. I'm going to try to get back up here because my awesome helper, and I love her to death, may have fallen asleep on me. QD, what's happening, man? Thanks for the super chat. I appreciate you, dude. He said it's really cool to see who are actually passing laws that are pro 2A. Diamonds in the rough. No, I agree, man. He says, everyone just talk honestly and openly. She's here now. That's what counts now. And that's what I was talking about very early in the stream. Yes, look, it all starts somewhere. It all starts with the people. And look, I don't like politicians, guys, at all. But I'm spending a lot of time trying to sift through them. And there are a few of them out there where it's like, man, they're just like me. They just found it was their calling to go up to my state's capital. And I'm glad I have an awesome state representative because I don't want to be a state representative. So this is a win-win. I can try to help fight in the court of public opinion because I do believe this is a culture war. And I think we all know this by now. I can fight it that way. My state representative Thompson can go fight like hell in Lansing. And there's other good ones that do too. And that's a win-win for me because, like I said, I don't want that for many reasons. Ultra Mega Mama Linda says, DLD After Dark with a member super chat. Hey, brother. Keep up the good work, my friend. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude. Dana Webb with a super chat. Thank you. Says they're trying now to fill the military with immoral people right now that can be turned against the people. Hey, I've heard that there's drag queens in the Navy to help entice people to join. Just saying. Maybe that'll entice people to join more. I'm not sure. Well, I really appreciate those 2 super chats. That definitely covers my parking for one day in Lansing and my gas money to go to Taylor last night. So I appreciate you guys. Yeah, I think I'm going to read this right now because, look, there's a lot going on by the minute. And I talked about how this all started with the King of England being impressive, to say the least. And part of the final straws that broke the camel's back was them coming for the colonist guns. Then we had, I'm still going to say this again, probably a second Revolutionary War in the United States, otherwise known as the Civil War. Taking guns. And the other was about many, many things, but it included slavery. But 40 million people could become slaves because you can be a slave when you're incarcerated. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. And this is what this experiment on self-governance was founded on. And this is actually a beautiful document. Besides the Bible, one of the most beautiful things I've read, quite frankly. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown. This probably explains why we're still here right now, getting more stuff taken away from us. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. We've become accustomed to gun control for 100 years now, guys. Just think about that for a minute. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain and of the United States of America and the former vice president is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws that most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right estimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. That's interesting, because in the Michigan House of Representatives, frequently you don't even know what the next session is going to be about until like 11 o'clock that night. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions to the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise. The state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without, the convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others, to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of the new appropriation of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices, sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and to eat out their substance. Now, if that doesn't sound like the AFT, I don't know what does. Just think about this one more time. Shall not be infringed. And this is the King of England. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and to eat out their substance. They're all eating good. You won't receive any compensation. In fact, you could be enslaved. Here in a couple weeks, he has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of the legislatures. Look, for all of you that didn't believe me, look. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. How long has it been since Congress has declared a war, guys? I mean, this is one of the number one things that set off the shot heard around the world. These are their big time grievances here. Very interesting. He has affected to render the military independence of and superior to the civil power. There we go. That's almost exactly what I was ranting about for the first half of the stream tonight. There should be no doubt whether they wanted the civilians to be more powerful than any type of standing army. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. This is one of the reasons they broke away. They're literally sitting in Lansing in a judiciary committee saying, we need the gun control laws of England. We need to do what England does. We're doing almost exactly everything right now in this country that England did, if you really think about it for a minute. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. Chevron deference? Chevron deference? Shall not be infringed, which is the Constitution? Huh. It's almost like this was written today. Imagine that. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretend legislation. I can't make this up. Look at this. Was this literally written like a few minutes ago, last week, or July 4th, 1776? QD with a super generous super chat. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, dude. He said, everybody think positive thoughts. Give it a shot. I actually think what I'm reading is being totally positive, isn't it? I mean, look, America, the United States of America, was founded literally on this. This is actually quite refreshing to me. It's just crazy how much of this is like, look, I said a minute ago, it's probably just as applicable now, these grievances they had, as it was back then. I think I was wrong, and you guys know it. No, especially some of these are like 10 times more applicable now than it was back then. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people. I mean, that could have literally been written like when Dettelbach was doing that hearing in front of Jim Jordan's congressional committee the other day. Wow. Wow. Thanks for the $100, cutie. I really appreciate it, man. And it does help a lot. Trust me, it does. Going on these different places I go to, and I'm just trying to do what I can. Colin out with a super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. He says, I apologize to the 2A community and Sam. We should not be divided by the Mackinac Bridge. Sorry. Just so depressing. Well, that's awesome, man. Glad to see you guys are getting along, and I appreciate your support as always and kind of coming back and saying you're a little bit sorry about some of that stuff last week. Hey, dude, look. Where I live, people shoot in their backyard too, you know? It's like we have what? 1, 2, 3 cities that are literally ruining this whole state. Well, those are the people that are ruining the whole state. And then I guess too many good people amongst the other 10 million that are just kind of, you know, doing nothing, doing whatever. No, I'm frustrated too, man. Jeez, oh, Pete. I'm going to have some more footage from Lansing soon, guys. That's how I'm able to just kind of keep up with everything, let you guys know what's going on. And I hope I'm inspiring some people that aren't just in Michigan. Hopefully, a lot of this Michigan talking content is good for all of you throughout these 50 states because, man, it's coming everywhere right now. It literally is. And I care about everyone. I just can't drive to every one of the 50 states capitals. You know, I physically can't do that. But from time to time, you know, hung out with my friend QD from Virginia down in South Carolina just about a month or so ago. So I get around from time to time, but clearly it's all I can do to kind of get to my state's capital. But yeah, man, when I go there, like I said, I get content, meaning I can share stuff with you guys, like take videos when I'm there, get information to report on. I hope it's worth it. As long as you guys keep watching, I'll do it because I just want more people to know. That's the main reason that I do that kind of stuff. But other than that, look, there are some really cool people that I met there. But I don't really have time to hang out with them. It kind of like, it's a really dark place to go to. You go there and it's just, you can just see evil. And I hate evil. And it's not tough to go there just like I'm afraid or anything like that. It's just tough to go there to be like, oh my gosh. Like sometimes you go in there and you hear stuff that goes on in these committees. You hear stuff that they're talking about on the House floor. They had to bring your children. It's a work day at the Capitol the other day, and I know they do that in other places too. I've had jobs before where it's take your kids to work day, and if you're a secretary, if you're whatever, well, they were doing that in the Michigan State Legislature. And there were small children that were on the House floor with, it could have been their mom, their dad, their grandparents in some cases, you know what I mean? But it was take your kids to work day, and they were on the House floor. And what do? Get up there and start talking about all kinds of perverted stuff. In my opinion, graphic details too. I'm telling you. I don't want to try to compare it to literal hell because I have no idea, and I'm really afraid to find out and don't want to find out. But, gosh, it just seems like hell on earth going into a place like that. Just nasty, despicable people. And so many of these people, I'm not saying every representative. Look, Representative Jamie Thompson, awesome person, and she's my friend. Representative Phil Green, a heck of a nice dude. Representative Angela Regas, and many, many more. Many more. Hung out with Michigan State Representative Bob Bazat. He was a longtime sheriff. County commissioner. We had a long talk on a podcast that I was on just this last Sunday and even beforehand. He's sickened and hates red flag laws just as much as anybody does. Trust me. Oh, there's some cool people up there. Some of them have different backgrounds, which actually makes me really interested in their opinion. Like you've got State Representative Mike Harris. He's a former cop. Former Sheriff Brian Begole. And these guys are all standing up to fight against gun control. But here's the sad part. Here's the real messed up part. I'm not just saying they're evil because they're coming after all of our guns in Michigan, which no doubt that's true, but it's actually even worse than that. So many of these people are so evil and so immoral, and nothing's sacred anymore. They say for the kids, for the kids, for the kids. They want to sterilize all of our kids. They say if there's one more death, we could save one life from a gun. The number one cause of death for children is firearms. No, the number one cause of death, okay? The number one cause of death for babies is abortion, actually. And in my opinion, they want to sterilize everybody where we won't even have a human race anymore. No, look. It's evil that they want to take our guns, but at the end of the day, this almost has nothing to do with guns at all, although it completely has everything to do with guns because it's a battle of good versus evil. And there's lots of very, very evil people out there. And there's lots of evil in Lansing, Michigan. There's a lot of evil in every state of this country. And there's lots of evil in our federal government. And when you hear this lunacy they talk about, and when you hear about all the stuff that they are doing and that they want to do, it makes you think to yourself, why would they get rid of guns? Because almost all gun owners I know are perfectly peaceful people, good people, and literally wouldn't take up their guns unless they absolutely had to. If they were put right in a corner and reduced to absolute despotism. That's what Thomas Jefferson said, right? No. The only reason they want to take your guns, and this is the scariest part, is because of all the other stuff. It's unfathomable and evil that they have planned and that they want to do next. And they're going faster. And they're going faster. The stuff that they're putting books in the children's libraries. The unholy alliances between government and corporation, but it's not even just that anymore. It's a lot worse than that. The unholy alliances with the state of Michigan and the CCP. You know, we won't have to worry about, we're not going to worry about one part of Michigan versus the other soon. No. The CCP is going to own this state before you know it. Communism. Nikita Khrushchev said, we'll take you over without firing a shot. And Gretchen Whitmer and the Democrats in the legislature are sending billions of dollars now. You'd think if there was an invading communist country coming in to take over your land, bring in their own police, their own government, within our land, you'd think you'd fight them off. Wouldn't you be shocked if you didn't fight them off and you just sat there and did nothing? That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? Well, not nearly as crazy as what's going on, because right now Michigan's paying billions of dollars to bring the Communist Chinese Party into the state of Michigan. Big time. It's not just one site anymore. It's not just two. Now it's three. I wonder why it is that in 100 days, they're also, while they're simultaneously bribing, paying money to bring the Communist Chinese Party into Michigan, they're putting more gun control bills up right now than we've seen in Michigan in 100 years. Now, it could just be a coincidence. I don't know. But yeah, not only are we not fighting off communism anymore, not only are we just not sitting there doing nothing, because evil always prevails when good men do nothing, but we're actually trying to encourage it and speed it up faster and faster and faster, and literally paying communist countries to come and take over our land in the state of Michigan. So, yeah. It has nothing to do with guns whatsoever, or the Second Amendment in a way, but it definitely has everything to do with it. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And as they're eroding that away in record speed, they're now bringing in other countries to run the state of Michigan, communist countries, to run the state of Michigan as fast as they possibly can. All right, guys, I appreciate you guys hanging out. I'm going to go back and read the beginning of the chat here, where I asked you ladder test or just pick a round, a popular round, and see how many blasts it takes. This stuff is pretty thick, and I'm not going to be able to score it with a razor blade. This is like thick stuff, but I will try to cut it with my diamond saw. And I really appreciate my friend Ron giving this to me and for the channel, because this is not the type of thing I normally do, but I am kind of looking forward to it. And I have no 5.7, unfortunately, or I would try it with that. So since I don't have any of the cool rounds, I will make do with what I've got. All right, guys, I'm going to get off of here. I really appreciate the generosity of those who were able to help me out a little bit. I've been putting all the money back into the channel, and probably actually too much, because when my lawnmower breaks down, I'll catch up this weekend the best I can. Locals, it's a censorship-free site. If you haven't joined yet, you can join tonight totally free. I put some awesome deals up on there today, and I will be back again streaming live, where I can have the whole thing and not just this piece of plastic, over on Locals tomorrow. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.